Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Ham on Beat, continuing with the Debunking Araki Forgot extras. This is part 7. You know the rules. If it gets to anything past Stone Ocean, I will be skipping ahead and then potentially stopping the video. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to another episode of Debunking Araki Forgot, where I answer some of the JoJo fans' questions that I haven't already covered. It's been quite a while, so I'm glad to finally be back. Since it's been so long, I think I put together a very nice list of topics, some of which I can go really in-depth on.
Cool.
So let's not waste any more time and get right to the questions.
Right into
Our
it.
first question comes from part 2. This person asks why when SEDC stole Loggins' arm, he wasn't affected by Hamon, like Dio was by Jonathan's body. The biggest misconception here, and one that I've seen a lot over the years, is that at no point was it ever said that Jonathan's body had Hamon in it, or that Hamon was affecting Dio in any way. The reason Dio's powers were diminished in part 3 was because of the body rejecting him. As I've gone over before, Jonathan's body has some kind of sentience and won't accept Dio's head.
Yeah, that's why it takes so long for him to be able to use his stand properly, which is why he's trying to put off the team reaching him so that he has time to actually learn to use the body properly.
This is also why the body emitted a distress signal that triggered the Joestar's stands to be drawn out and caused Holly's stand to go haywire. As for SEDC's case, simply grafting on an arm isn't going to carry Loggins' soul inside of it or anything, and as I said, Hamon has nothing to do with this process. Next is a part 3 question.
Interesting question, though.
This person asks why the Crusaders decide to go to Egypt after seeing the fly, when they could have just deduced that Dio was in Egypt due to Avdol and Kakyoin both meeting him there.
Yeah, they saw him there.
Well, there's one simple thing that conflicts with this, which is that they didn't know Kakyoin had met Dio in Egypt until after they discovered the fly. This next one asks how during the fight with Steely Dan, Jotaro was able to know what Kakyoin was up to when he was so far away and they couldn't communicate. I assume they're referring to the end of the fight when Jotaro said Hierophant Green had wrapped around Lovers to prevent it from targeting the little girl.
Okay.
However, this whole interaction itself already answers this question. Jotaro caught Lovers before it could enter his ear and then let it go before it was sent to the little girl. He catches the stand and looks right at it with Star Platinum, who as we know has extremely advanced vision. It's after this that Jotaro points out to Steely Dan that Kakyoin had wrapped a tentacle around him. Jotaro would have never let the stand go and endangered an innocent person if he didn't already see this, which he did. And of course, as he says at the end, he never had any intention of letting Dan go in the first place.
There you go.
In my previous video, I went over the fact that Joseph planned to read Enya's mind using a TV, but she was killed by the Flesh Bud before that could happen. In response to that, this commenter asks why Joseph didn't just use the TVs from Enya's hotel that they were just staying in. First of all, I would like to just point out that we never actually see a TV inside the hotel in the manga. It's only in the anime that we get this additional scene of them fiddling with the TV in their room. However, what this comment seems to forget is that the hotel, along with the entire town, is a fog illusion created by Enya's stand, so there never really was any TV here to be used. Now for a part 4 question. This one asks how the ghosts in the alley were able to grab Killer Queen since they aren't stands and shouldn't be able to interact with them. It's actually been shown in the series that ghosts and stands are interconnected.
Yeah, I'm sure we've seen that before.
I've actually made an entire video on the subject.
Have I watched that?
First is the idea of one's soul and stand being essentially the same thing, like we saw during the Black Sabbath arc. However, part 4 itself already answers this question. This was the entire reason behind the characters being able to see Raimi in the first place.
Yeah.
Raimi says that stand users and ghosts are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, like, no one else can see her, can they? It's just the stand users.
Meaning that ghosts are similar enough to stands to be able to interact in this way. The next question comes from part 5. They claim that Bucciarati is never seen using his zipper to attach 2 separate things together except for when he zipped Zucchero's mouth closed. Now, it sort of seems like he answers his own question here by just directly bringing up the time when Bucciarati actually did do this. Although I assume the intent of the question would be that it would have been useful in other cases. However, the commenter seems to forget that Bucciarati actually did do this multiple times.
Oh, okay, here we go. I like that. It's a misdirect. It's like, except for this one time, why didn't he do it? And it's like, oh, okay, well, he must have just done it the one time then, if you use it as an example.
After the fight with Man in the Mirror, he used a zipper to reattach Abakio's hand, and later Trish's hand after it was severed by Diavolo. Against King Crimson, he sealed the hole punched through him to trap King Crimson's hand in his body. And of course, all the way back in his first ever meeting with Giorno, he removed his own arm to reattach and swap it with the bystanders to avoid Giorno's ability. This next one asks how it's possible that Giorno was born in 1985, when Dio had only been out of the coffin for a year by 1988. This is just completely wrong. In the third chapter of Part 3, it was directly said by Joseph that the empty coffin was found 4 years ago, meaning Dio had actually left the coffin by at least 1984. If we take a look at the JoJo 6251 art book, this further clarifies that Dio's return happened in 1983.
Alright, there we go.
Next is another question that once again deals with the stand, Talking Head.
Oh, the one that does
In some of my previous videos, I addressed comments from people asking why Narancia couldn't just say the opposite of what he wanted to make Talking Head reverse it. I pointed out that this is not how Talking Head works whatsoever, and that the stand's power is not to reverse what you say, but to make you lie.
Yeah.
If you lie on purpose, it will simply come out as a lie, which is actually something Narancia does to his advantage later in the fight. However, this comment points out that Natasha could simply write down what he wanted to say. Well, as I have pointed out before, Talking Head does not simply affect your speech. For example, Narancia is shown trying to point somewhere, but being unable to point where he wants. And
So
if we take a look at the manga rather than the anime, there is a scene of Narancia trying to write down what he wants, with it coming out completely wrong.
Right.
This next one asks, how is Trish seemingly able to awaken a stand because her father had one, when stands are not shown to be hereditary, as seen with Jolene? Now, this person is correct in the idea that stand abilities aren't really hereditary, since Jotaro says as much in Part 6, and hence why Jolene would not necessarily be born with a stand just from being Jotaro's daughter. However, in the case of Trish, we actually need to focus on an entirely different thing, the properties of the stand arrow. As we saw in Part 3, when the stand arrow was used by Dio on Jonathan's body, it awoke stands in the other Joestars. This is because certain families in JoJo have strong connections through psychic links, and the power of the arrow is able to awaken stands through this. One property of these psychic links is that at times people can sense when someone they're connected to is nearby. In Part 3, Enya mentions that she has this connection with her son, and the Joestars have one with each other. In Part 5, Trish is also able to sense Diavolo's presence, showing that they have a strong psychic link. This is how Trish was given a stand ability, although it remained dormant until fully awakening later in Part 5's story. Next is another Part 5 related one, this time dealing with the spin-off novel Purple Haze Feedback. Of course, I should point out that this wasn't written by Araki, so it isn't really an Araki Forgot related thing, but I did think the topic was interesting enough to cover. This person points out that near the end of the book, the stone mask was destroyed by a shot from a revolver. They ask if it's actually that easy to destroy. For this, I'd like to point out that we actually have seen masks being destroyed and they don't seem to be exceptionally sturdy or anything. For example, near the end of Phantom Blood, Speedwagon destroys the stone mask with a sledgehammer. So since it's never really shown to be indestructible, I think I can accept the mask being destroyed by a gun.
Yeah, fair enough.
One question I've seen countless people ask is how the mothers of Giorno and Dio's other sons were able to escape, when Dio only viewed these women as food. I honestly don't really see a huge issue with this at all. As we've learned, Dio traveled across the world and was obsessed with the forces of fate that cause people to meet. I don't see how it's so far-fetched that Dio would have encounters with people that aren't strictly for sustenance, which has actually been the case for a lot of different characters. Regardless, I also think the question sort of answers itself here. Dio had little regard for these women, so I don't think he would particularly care if one just wandered off. He could just get another one anytime he pleased. Another Part 5 one. This person mentions how La Squadra was being pursued by the boss, yet Risotto was the only one who fought him directly. He asks if Risotto could just kill the boss himself, why he kept sending his men to die instead of ganging up on him. There's a few things wrong with this. First of all, Diavolo is not personally going and attacking them, he's sending his agents to do it. Second, La Squadra has no clue what the boss's identity is. This was the entire reason that they wanted to secure Trish, to learn more about his identity so they could track him down. The comment also seems to think that Risotto sought out the boss to fight him. This didn't happen at all. Risotto was in Sardinia investigating the boss's past just like everyone else. He headed here after he heard about the crashed plane off the coast and connected it with the location in the photo of Trish's mother taken from her room. He had no idea Doppio was the boss until they actually started fighting. This next question deals with part 6. They mention how it was said that Dio carved the 14 phrases into his stand so he wouldn't forget them, and that this implies that he hadn't written them in the diary and therefore Pucci could have never learned them from Jotaro's memory. However, the implication here is not that the words were never written in the diary. By saying he did this so that he won't forget them, Dio is referring to his rebirth through the green baby. By carving the words onto his stand, he literally shaped his own soul with his will to obtain heaven. Since these words are part of him, the baby remembers them subconsciously and knows to trust the one that says the words to him. The actual words themselves still exist in the diary, which is how Dio's trusted friend is meant to learn them. One of the most common questions I've seen asked is how Pucci was able to extract and insert discs after his stand had transformed into Sea Moon and later made in heaven. Well, first let's look into the extracting part. The last time Pucci is seen doing this is in the Heavy Weather arc. Pucci did say before this point that his stand was beginning to transform after its fusion with the green baby. However, it was not finished yet, and this transformation was a slow process that continued the closer he got to Cape Canaveral. So at this point, it still has the basic abilities of Whitesnake, with some minor time-related anomalies surrounding it. By the time Pucci reached the Kennedy Space Center, his stand had radically changed to become Sea Moon. Now when it comes to inserting discs, I've seen a lot of people point out that Pucci shouldn't have been able to insert the weather disc into Emporio, since only Whitesnake can insert discs.
Is that true though?
This is simply untrue.
Yeah.
We have seen multiple examples throughout the story of people inserting discs without the help of Whitesnake. First of all, Jolene was able to briefly use the Star Platinum disc, and multiple characters were able to insert and read memory discs on their own. Of course, the most obvious example would be the fact that Jotaro had both of his discs reinserted by the Speedwagon Foundation to be saved. In fact, in some circumstances, Whitesnake isn't even needed to remove a disc. Take the McQueen fight, for example. We see that if someone is hit hard enough, their disc will pop out on its own. In fact, Pucci even says that Versus could use Underworld to unearth a disc out. Of course, this only seems to be the case if Whitesnake manipulated their discs beforehand. Now for another Part 6 question. They ask why Anasui turned into a snail from looking at the rainbow if, as Hermes said, stand users are immune to it. Well, this isn't exactly true. Hermes never said stand users are immune, she said that they seem to have some resistance to it. This was the reason they didn't all immediately turn into snails. However, Jolene and Hermes obviously still had to avoid touching the snails or the rainbow to not accelerate the transformation. In Anasui's case, Pucci used the car mirror to reflect it straight into him, making him transform faster. Another question asks why Pucci kept Weather's memory disk instead of just throwing it away or destroying it. Well, first let's go over that last part, since discs are impervious to normal damage and can't actually be destroyed. Pucci also wouldn't want to just toss the disc away where anybody could get their hands on that sensitive information. Now there is one way a disc can permanently be erased, and that is to put the disc into a dying person. However, Pucci still had another reason to keep the disc. Near the end of the Heavy Weather arc, Pucci tells Weather that he could have killed him whenever he wanted, but kept him alive with the idea of saving him someday. This would imply that Pucci did intend to restore Weather's memories.
He was going to give it back at some point, right? Yeah, okay.
This next question asks how it's possible that thus Spokushibe Rohan is canon, when it has chapters set after 2012, despite Rohan dying in Part 6. They say that this page here depicts Rohan rapidly decaying in the hospital. It seems like this person paid the absolute bare minimum of attention possible to the scene. Let's take a closer look at what's going on here. First, we're shown the scene of the mangaka being unable to draw anything due to the accelerated universe drying his ink. Yeah. He asks on the phone if anyone else is still making their deadline and hears that Rohan is, which we know is due to his extremely fast drawing abilities. Immediately after this, we are shown an old man passing away in the hospital and immediately decaying. So this person assumed that because Rohan was mentioned in one scene, and then the dead person was shown, that this dead person must automatically be Rohan. Despite the fact that the context in which Rohan was brought up in the first scene kind of necessitates that he's alive to still be drawing and making deadlines.
That's silly.
This person also seems to ignore that the Rohan in this scene has an elderly wife and is surrounded by people calling him Grandpa, despite Rohan only being in about his early 30s at this time.
Yeah.
The next one asks why Pucci didn't just use his stand to age Emporio and kill him, like how earlier a baby was shown to be aged by his power. The answer to this is that Pucci does not have that ability anymore. As I went over a little while ago, Poochie's stance started to slowly change after he fused with the green baby. During this time, he had some chaotic and unrefined time-related powers. These powers also affected biological beings, something Poochie would obviously not want to do with his final ability in order to bring about heaven. When Poochie reached the exact coordinates, his stand finally evolved to have the ability he actually wanted, to manipulate gravity and therefore time in such a way to accelerate the universe while leaving biological beings normal. So the simple answer is, Poochie is no longer able to do this now that his stand has been refined into Made in Heaven. This next question deals with Steel Ball Run. They point out how at the end in particular, like their counterparts, this one asks, how was Gyro able to sing about unbothered and is actually extremely disturbed? Right arm was the one Johnny and Gyro won. This one pertains to the scene when Johnny was under the Fukushima Rohan as part of the same continuity as Part 7, 8, and Poaching Seashore. We can also see the Morio. I don't really see how with the rock from one person to another, which actually can cure.
My God. Jesus. Oh, gosh, sorry about that. Probably be the case with the next one. Seeing that Debunking Araki Forgot Extras is like 45 minutes, but I can see that you've got the guy from Steel Ball Run in the thumbnail, so sorry, don't want to be spoiled and stuff, but again, do like checking these out. Well, actually, let me know in the comments down below if number 8 does have a lot, and then I could potentially just save that for another time, because there are other videos that Ham and Beat's got that I could check out, because obviously I'm waiting for Steel Ball Run to have a physical release, which I don't think it'll be too long. I reckon it'll start coming out next year, and then I can start checking stuff out then. But sorry about that. Thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, I want to be able to watch Patreon-only reactions, such as the original Dragon Ball series. Links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys next time.